It's time for us to check back in with the family history and stories of Opal, Corn, Myers. If you've missed any of the previous readings, just look in the description below for a playlist, and you can find a link in the description of where you can buy this wonderful, wonderful book. I have it available in my Etsy shop. Ebenezer Burned. It was on Saturday, January 20th, 1962, when I would guess a fire in the stovepipe chimney caused the mission to burn down. I started grabbing things, but the house was burning too fast for me to salvage much. All I was able to save was an old ragged teddy bear, my school bag, and a box of pictures. I don't know why I grabbed the teddy bear. I guess because that morning I had gone to the attic to get it and it was just laying there. I was going to make it a new outfit and give it to Acorn. He was just 6 years old then. Of course, those pictures are worth more than anything now. A lot of those pictures were the ones I had taken of the mission and people around here when I was a young girl, an aspiring writer compiling my first book. After I started teaching school, I took a lot more pictures. I still had that same little camera. The only reason those pictures were saved was because I had loaned them to Catherine Marshall. She had sent them back to me, but I hadn't yet put them away. Later, I loaned those same pictures to the movie people who were thinking about making a movie of Christy. They made some enlargements for me that I kept in nice picture albums. Those books have traveled everywhere. I still have hundreds of pictures scattered all over that I need to put in albums. Everything else was lost in the fire. All of our furniture, clothes, just everything. The books and records of the mission were destroyed. Letters and important things that I'd saved for years, as far back as my days at Highland, were all gone. I didn't look at them a lot anymore, but every once in a while I would dig them out and read those old letters from Mama and Papa, and especially the one that Mrs. Henderson had written to me when I was so homesick. I'd also written notes in journals from the time I was quite young. I guess I started doing that about the time I did the pictorial history of the area. They were notes about different things that had happened up here, ideas for stories that someday I might write. If I ever had written a book, it probably would have been fiction based on the real-life story that happened before I went away to Highland, about an educated young woman from a wealthy family in Newport who fell in love with a back mountain young man. I always thought it would make an interesting story. I even had a title picked out, The 30-Minute Marriage. The young woman was a teacher in the one-room school not far from where Walton Turner was living in the dirt floor cabin that I ended up buying in 1947 from that rowdy family who overturned my outhouse. Lawton's family lived up from him just over the ridge on Rocky Top Mountain Road. Well, the teacher and Lawton, who was 3 or 4 years older than me, fell in love and got married at his cabin. After the wedding, as most everybody was leaving, she told Lawton, "Go back up to your mother's and get my comfortable shoes so we can walk up to our favorite spot when everyone's gone. I'll stay here and say goodbye to the rest of our wedding guests." After Lawton had been gone for just a little while, her uncle and the sheriff and somebody else appeared. She talked with them for a minute, and then without any explanation to the other people, she rushed down the hill with them towards the sheriff's car that they had parked down at Papa's. When Lawton got back, they told him what happened, and he took off after them down the hill to catch them, but of course they had too much of a head start. Lawton was halfway down the hill when he saw them getting into the car and start driving down the road. The roads were not good, so they couldn't drive fast, but they were fast enough that as hard as he tried, Lawton could not catch up with them. When he got up to Roy Dan's, he saw the car going up the hill, and he gave out and came back. In about a week, Lawton got a letter from her saying, "I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be your wife anymore." Just like they were little children playing house. When my uncle and the sheriff came, they told me that somehow my mother had heard we were getting married. It was such a shock to her that they had feared she might have had a heart attack and didn't know if she would survive. I will have to stay here and take care of my mother. I will not be teaching at the school anymore, and I will not have time to see you again." Nobody around here ever knew if her mother truly had that heart attack or not. A good bit after that, she was seen getting on a train with her grandmother. She had a market basket on her arm covered with a towel. Of course, rumors got started from that and spread all over the place. A married man could sleep with other women and even have children with them, and no one thought much about it. But when Lawton's wife left him and wouldn't come back, everyone in the community faulted him like he had done something awful. They had never lived together or anything, but he was stamped as a married man, and people held that against him. People back here were very peculiar. I never could see where Lawton had done anything wrong, and neither could the rest of our family, but my sisters and I weren't very nice to him either. One time he tried to go somewhere with us, and I was actually kind of hateful. Mama said we couldn't go with you because you was an old married man. Lawton had always been a friend of ours, and of course that hurt his feelings. It would hurt anyone, but we didn't think about that at the time. Lawton didn't hear tell of her again until World War II, when he was in Germany. That's when he got a letter saying she had divorced him and he was free to marry again if he wanted to. It was so strange that she waited all those years to get a divorce, especially after only being married for 30 minutes. Lawton married twice after that. Sometime after his next wife died, he married his nephew's widow. She was a real sweet woman, but after her husband was killed in a wreck, she just sort of stayed to herself and didn't go out much. She told me once, "After my husband died, I felt so lost and I was so lonely, it seemed that I would never be happy again." Lawton was real nice to me, always making sure that I was taken care of. That's just the way he's always been with everyone. He's a good man, but he was lonely too, and one day we realized that we liked being around each other, and when we weren't lonely. That's when we decided to get married. Old storehouse in Slab town. At first, after the mission burned, I had planned on moving over to the old McMahon place. After all, I owned the place, and it just seemed to me like the sensible thing to do. But that idea really upset everybody something awful, especially the friends I taught with in Del Rio. They went wild because of all I had to do in nursing Ben, plus all the regular work that had to be done around the place. One of the teachers actually came right out and said, "It would be better if you found a place out of the cove. That way, we'll be close enough to help you get Ben to the doctor or help with some of the chores or whatever you need us to do." Of course, she was right. They all were. I had so much to do, and I was just plain wearing down. Every night when I got home, I had to fix supper, get the kindling and wood for the next day, and then finish whatever other chores needed to be done. Of course, the boys all helped as much as they could, but there was more than enough work to go around. Sometimes I wouldn't get but a few hours of sleep a night, and even in those precious hours, it seemed like I slept half awake. I was always listening for any unusual sound that Ben might make, and then I would get up to check on him. Sometimes during one of his bad spells, it was easier for me to sleep in a chair by his bed. There were stretches of time that might last for days or several weeks when he would sleep soundly, but even then I had to get up at 2 o'clock every morning and build a fire in my wood-burning cook stove so I could heat water to make hot compresses to put on Ben's shoulders. While I waited for the water to heat, I would prepare his food for that day and lay out the things he needed. Ben's sickness was the only reason why I would have ever lived outside of the community, that and people insisting that I move. It's during times like those that you realize how many people there are who really care about you. It turned out that my friends had given me good advice, even though they had to get pretty firm with me before I listened to them. My teacher friends, every one of them, gave to a fund so we could get a house and have enough money to pay the first month's rent. I don't know what I would have done or how we would have made it if we had stayed up here during that time. We found a place to rent. It wasn't much, just an old storehouse in Slab town, but we thought it would be a good place to settle in for a while. My friends from school helped me in so many ways. They did everything, like helping me with meals and other things. Soon Ben was doing a little better. He was getting out some, but he did not want to go to church. He would take us, but he wouldn't venture inside the church building or have anything to do with it. And that snake handling business at the other church upset him so. Of course, that upset a lot of others also. Late in August of 1962, we had our buckets in hand and were fixing to go pick blackberries when one of our neighbors knocked on the door. "Come in," I told her, and before I could say another word, she blurted out, "You can move now. We bought this place and we want it now." She said it just like that, and we had no choice in the matter. Our rent was paid through the end of the month, so that only gave us a couple days to find another place. We didn't know what we were going to do. We set our buckets down, and Ben said, "Instead of picking berries, guess we'll just have to go looking for a new home. We at least need to find a place to sleep." So that's what we did. We left and drove around all day looking for our next home. Spicewood Flats, rode on Lafayette Moore's place. We found the nicest little place way back in the woods in an area we had never heard of before. It was off the highway, out past the school, headed away from Del Rio. The house was completely surrounded by trees, and it reminded me a lot of our land, except it was kind of swampy there. Of all the places I have ever lived outside of the cove, I liked this one best. I didn't talk to anyone about Ben's health or how he was doing unless they asked, and even then I didn't tell them any more than was necessary to satisfy them. It was so much easier going to school if the teachers didn't say anything about Ben or ask questions all the time. So much easier when I didn't have to talk about any of that. A couple of the teachers had said something to me a few times about me letting him drive the car all over the place. They'd say, "If I were you, I'd stop him. He wouldn't run all my gas out." Well, they weren't me, and they had no idea what it was like to live with someone who had been sick for so long. If Ben slept during the day, he would stay up during the night, wander around the house, and then I'd be wide awake, wondering if he was all right. I had to get up early to teach school and needed my sleep at night. I would find things for him to do so he would move around during the day, or at least for a while in the late afternoon or evening. Sometimes I'd find things for the boys to do with him, or I would give Ben $1 and ask him to go down to the store and get a loaf of bread or something. He would stay gone then for a good while. I guess he would find someone to talk to or just ride around. Then if nothing bothered him, he would sleep good that night. I hadn't slept in the same bed with him for some time because every time I turned over or moved, it would bother him. We didn't have any room in the house for another bed. We did have a couch that I could sleep on, but I didn't want to be that far away from him, so I would sleep in a chair by his bed. After a while, Ben got so bad that I was afraid for him to drive to town, so one of us or one of the neighbors would offer to drive him. Ben wasn't much of a talker. Once in a while he might tell a joke, but he talked very little. He might have talked with the men in town, I don't really know, but he probably just listened to the others talk about all of their problems. That's what they usually talked about, all the problems they had. Of course, I had problems too, but as far as I could tell, they didn't get any better sitting around talking about them. It was a problem having to teach school and to do all the other things that had to be done, but as far as Ben being a problem, like a lot of sick people are, he never really was like that. He wasn't demanding at all. The only thing he didn't like was for us to leave him alone. Around the house, he didn't talk much either. He would sleep or get up and turn on the radio. If it hadn't been for teaching school and my children, I would have been pretty lonely around him. I never thought much about that, though, and I have never been one to worry about being lonely. I've always been able to find more than enough to do. One night, Ben wanted to go to church with me, but once we got inside, he just laid down on the bench and slept the whole time. I just let him sleep until it was time to go home. Ben's daddy and the rest of his family never came around much. His daddy and them would call once in a while, but none of them ever bothered to come see him. I guess they didn't realize how sick he was until the very last. Then they came and brought food and did everything they could possibly do. I would take Ben to see them every time he wanted to visit. The last time, it was at night when we started up to his daddy's. We got about halfway there and he said, "We'd better go back home." He just didn't feel like going, and that was the last time he ever mentioned anything about going to his daddy's. Then one day, Ben took a real turn for the worst. So I rushed him to see his doctor in Newport. Well, his doctor wouldn't even see us. Here Ben was, sicker than he had ever been, and his doctor acted like he didn't want to be bothered. So we went and talked with another doctor. That doctor delivered the news. "Your husband has some very serious lung problems, and we have nothing here in Newport that will help him. We'll have to send him someplace else. Eastern State's the only place that's close by that can handle all of his problems, or you could send him to Asheville." I said, "Let's send him to Asheville." That was in November of 1964. They admitted him in the hospital there in North Carolina and kept him there. On Christmas Day, the doctor's office called and told me to come on up to the hospital as soon as I could get there. The doctor had something he wanted to tell me. We rushed around to get ready to leave, but when we got there, they told us we would have to wait because it was Christmas and the doctor was out sledding with his little boy. That made me so mad, I just blurted out, "Well, why didn't he know that it was Christmas when he had you call and tell me to hurry over? Why would he even have us come on Christmas?" We had to sit around there and wait and wait and wait until after dinner for the doctor to finally get there. Ben already knew he was real sick. Exactly what is the matter with me? When the doctors told him, he just looked up at the doctor and the first thing he said was, "Can I just go home?" "Yes, but you'll have to come back. We have a new treatment for your lungs that we haven't used at this hospital before, and we want to try using it with you. We need you to come back on Monday or Tuesday." Ben didn't want any more treatments. "I don't want you experimenting on me. I want to go home and stay there. My family can look after me as good as the people around here can." So we got his things together and they told us what to do for him. We put him in the back of the car and brought him home. One of the things they told me was that Ben had to have a piece of beef liver every day, so I'd have to get up every morning early and cook it. Then I would make gravy to put over it so it would be soft. I put a biscuit with it on the plate and put it in the stove so he would help himself to it when he got up. By April of 1965, I knew he probably wouldn't last much longer. The last few days he got so bad that he couldn't get in and out of bed by himself. I wasn't strong enough to lift him or support his weight, leaning on me either, so I couldn't help him. I had two neighbors, one below me and one above me, who took turns helping me. The Hendersons were especially good to help. Word got out and people from everywhere brought by food so I wouldn't have to be worried about cooking. In fact, we had so much food there that one of my neighbors said, "Mercy, you've got a mess of food here. Why don't you package some of it up and use my deep freezer there and freeze a heap of it?" On Saturday the 24th, I knew for sure that Ben wouldn't last much longer. Acorn wasn't home right then, and just to get the other two away, I sent Selden to the neighbors with some food to put in their freezer, and I sent Carrie up to the Hendersons to call Ben's folks. There was another soldier, a friend of Ben's, who had died a few days earlier and was buried that afternoon. When the people left the funeral, a lot of them decided to come by our house. First visitors were with Ben, and I had just stepped out to invite some of the other people to come in for a minute when I heard Ben start screaming. He was looking right at the people there with him and screaming at them. "If you don't come on, you'll get burned up. You're gonna burn up. You're gonna burn up." and then he died. I guess they all thought he was seeing the fires of hell or something. They looked like they had seen a ghost, and the blood appeared to drain from their faces. It seemed to help somewhat when I told them about the explosion at the airfield when he was in the service. Isn't that just something? After all that time, he was screaming for those men to come on and go with him. It had been 20 years that he carried that memory with him. I can't imagine that kind of torture. Well, everyone who had heard the screaming came rushing in. Of course, they saw right quick that Ben was gone. They took everything off the bed and put a clean quilt back on there and placed Ben on it. That's the first thing people always did up here when someone died. It was called laying them out. I don't know how I managed to handle all of this, but somehow I did. It just had to be the Lord who gave me the strength. That's all that it could have been. When he came back from the army, we just had Corinne, and then we had our 3 little boys. There were never any times that I wished I hadn't had the children. There were many hard times, but I was always glad that I had my young'uns. Ben's death was really hard on the boys. Carrie was a freshman in high school, and Selden was in the 7th grade. Acorn was only 9 years old. I couldn't do much with them. They just couldn't understand it. They had always done things for him when he didn't feel well. They knew he was sick, but they hadn't thought about being that bad off, not sick enough to die. When people saw the way they took on over his death, they would say, "Your Ben must have been a good daddy to them boys." Ben was good to them, but he wasn't good to anyone when he took those spells. When he was normal, he was good. The Hendersons were just great. The night Ben died, they wouldn't let us stay at our house. "You don't need to be cooking tonight or worrying about making breakfast in the morning. You and the boys get a few things together and come down and stay the night with us. It'll be easier on the boys, too. We'll take care of everything. You just take care of them boys." In the morning, she got some of the neighbor women, and they went down to our place and cleaned up the house, cleaned up everything. Even with being gone, I still could not move back to my old community where I owned land. The land was just too far away, and the roads were not good. I wanted to be there for the boys, just as close to home as I could be, and spend my time with them. Selden had rheumatism or something like that, and the dampness of the place we rented bothered his leg, so I started looking for another place to rent. About a year after Ben died, we moved to Ground Squirrel on the Claude Nicholas place. It was another pretty nice house for the same amount of rent, only $20 a month. Somehow, we always made do. We'll stop right there for today. Interesting peek again into Opal's life. Really sad in this part of the book because of Ben kind of going downhill and then dying. Well, it starts out sad though. It starts out when they lost the mission. I wanted to say mill for some reason. Lost the mission to fire. All the stuff that they lost, all the documents that were the history of the mission. Of course, all their furniture and their clothes and any kind of mementos. You know, those are the things that people, I know when I've had friends who lost their house, lost everything to fire, and those are the things they missed. It's not the refrigerator. Those are a pain and a cost because you've got to replace them. Things like your stove or your dishwasher, your washer and dryer, those things. But it's the meaningful things that you lost. You know, the pictures your children drew, pictures themselves. Just little things that maybe to somebody else wouldn't mean nothing, but they're irreplaceable. So really, really sad. And in those days, house fires just happened more often because of using the wood stove, and there was just a greater chance. They didn't have the best insulation, they didn't have the best chimneys, they didn't have some of the safety features we have today. So it was just much more likely to happen, and happened more often in those days. My daddy, Pap, he had a house, it was right here in Wilson Holler where they lived before I was born. Daddy had just got out of the Marines when the fire happened. He'd lived there before, but it was in the kind of the pasture going out of Wilson Holler now, and then they moved further up here when they rebuilt their house. But the house burnt down, they were all there. But it was kind of like Opal said, there was no stopping it. And I guess another reason is those old houses, they just are like kindling once they start. And if it does start in the ceiling and up in those places, it's just hard to try to put it out. So Daddy couldn't put his out either. And of course he wasn't the only one there. There's other people. But all of Daddy's marine things, that's what he lost. They all burned up. There was no way to hurry up and get them out of the closet. Top of the closet, he told me, is where they's at. There was no way to get them. And anyway, so that's sad. And sad that then, you know, they had to rent somewhere, and sad that she had to leave her little community. Now, she says they were right, all the teachers who encouraged her that you can't live there. This is your opportunity to move somewhere closer so we can help you. She said they were exactly right, that it's good that she listened to them. So I know in the long run that really helped her. She said then after they were situated there and she did have that extra help, she thought, how in the world would I have made it if we had moved, just stayed where we were at? I guess because Ben was getting gradually worse. Real interesting that she told the story about Walton Turner and his marriage, the 30-minute marriage. Makes you wonder, you just can't, it's hard to figure out, and I don't know if Opal could figure it out because she don't really give any insight other than he never really knew what happened. Makes you wonder if the mother did, like if she really did have a heart attack and her daughter went back and then she said, you can't leave me or I'll die. And so she didn't go back to Lawton. Maybe she didn't really love him and that was her way out. Maybe she just found herself in that position. Then she's like, I gotta get out of here and this is my out. Mama saying that she's sick. Or maybe your mama really was sick. And her mama, you remember another part of this book where there was a family that didn't want their, that was their daughter too, to be married to someone from such an area as that. So maybe the mother just really, I don't know, once she got back home, told her, like, you're such a fool. He's just an old country mountain boy, and you're just never going to have nothing, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But that's really strange and really sad that he didn't know. He didn't know what happened. Can you imagine all the hoopla and the happiness and everybody patting you on the back and telling you congratulations, and then you're married for 30 minutes and then you come back and she's getting in a sheriff's car and going down the road and then you never see her again? Oh my goodness, how heartbreaking that had to be. Embarrassing, all that. And then Opal says, that is the one of those double standards things, how she said married men, it's just a fact of life, not all of them, but some of them had affairs and had children. She's talked about some of that, and no one even blinked an eye at that. But then, just because his wife left him, which looks like they just all feel sorry for Lawton, but then they treated him differently. And Opal says even she did, even her and her sisters did. And I'm sure she wished at the time she was telling this that she had not done that. But strange how they would blame it on him, isn't it? Looks like they just all take up for him and kind of rally around him and say, well, you didn't need her anyway. I don't know. Anyway, that was really, really interesting to hear about that. This one really, Opal shares some of the really tough situations of being a caregiver. Any kind of caregiving is hard. If you've got a patient that is easy-go-lucky and just, I'm sorry, I'm a bother and that kind of thing, that's still hard. It's so hard to care for somebody when they're really sick. I think it's an honor to care for somebody like that, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard. Even if it is an honorable thing to do, it doesn't mean that it's not hard, that you're not exhausted physically, mentally, all of it. It's just really, really hard. I've helped take care of people and in their last days, and it's just really, really hard. It just really is. And for Opal, it was kind of a long, drawn-out process. She says it had been 20 years since he come home from the service, and he had never been himself. So it was that long process of him gradually declining. And then at the end here, sounds like something had happened to his lungs. But she could never just trust him to be okay. It was like kind of, I guess, living on pins and needles, just afraid of what would happen next. But she talks about, sleeping in the chair so she could be close to him. And of course today we'd be like, well, in my mind, I'm like, well, why don't you get you a little cot and just pull it right by the bed? it was a different time. They didn't have little cots that they could go get an air mattress on the floor. Today we could do that. They didn't have things like that. So you can really hear the kind of the weariness in Opal's voice as she remembers the times, all those times that she had to take care of him, and getting up so early and heating the water. Of course, everything was harder in those days, cooking for him, laying everything out. And you can also hear kind of her aggravation. I think Opal probably thought of it like, this is my lot in life. I'm going to do the best I can for Ben because I love him, because he's my husband, he's the father of my children. And it's hard, but I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. That's just what I'm going to do. With the good Lord's help, I'm just going to do it. But when the teachers would kind of, I guess, needle her about it, you could tell she just wanted them not to talk about it. It was her duty, her lot in life, and she was just going to tackle it. And she was doing it the best that she could do. So she said she was preferred when they didn't ask her questions or talk to her about it. So really, just you can hear though how hard it is. I did like the part that she says, well, two things. I love the part when she says that she guessed Ben, when he went to the store, she seen him to the store or whatever, that they probably talked about their problems, him and the other men. That's what they would sit down there and do. And she says, basically, I've got problems too, but I've never thought sitting around talking about them helped them. She's so right. Often, of course, there's nothing wrong with venting to your family or your friends or whoever, but that don't ever make your problems go away. It doesn't. And lots of times, I'm afraid it makes them worse. The bigger you, I used to tell Corey and Katie that the more you focus on them, the bigger they get. The bigger and the bigger and the bigger they get. Try to focus. Put your focus somewhere else. So I liked that part. Another example that is of her just making, she's just going to make do and do the best that she could do. But also, I like her little insight she give us into the teachers, like them saying, don't let him out and waste your gas money. You're letting him just drive all over the place. But Opal is so often like that. We judge other people and think, well, they should, and really we don't know unless we're in their shoes. She wanted him to get out and do that stuff because that meant she would probably get to sleep that night. So to her, that trade-off of maybe if he did waste a little gas or whatever, that was worth it, because then that meant at night she would get to sleep. Whereas if he was just stuck at home all day, he might sleep all day and then he wasn't going to sleep at all. So so often we don't fully, or I know I do, I'm guilty of talking about stuff that I know nothing about, and that we really can't know what someone else goes through because we're not them. We don't know all the details and all that. So I liked how she kind of gently explained that part. And then the end is, really sad there when he ends up having to go off to, he ends up in Asheville, and whatever it is wrong with his lungs, and they want to do the experimental technique or medicine or whatever treatment, I guess, that they've come up with, and he don't want them to. He says, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I'm tired of this. I don't want to go home, and I don't want to be here. I can certainly understand that. Certainly understand it. And then he does go downhill pretty quick after that. Sad, the things that he was saying right before he died, and I can see Opal said she guessed all those people thought that he was talking about he was seeing hell or something, but I'm sure he was reliving that trauma that really caused his brain to kind of break, where he lost the men in the airplane explosion. So such a sad way to go. So sad. I guess part of it, though, and we'll read more about Opal, maybe then he was at peace. I don't think Opal doubted that he was saved, as we would say, that he was a child of the Almighty. I don't think she doubted that, but he just struggled. And so often we think about people struggling with a physical, whether it's cancer or their legs, don't work right, or their arms or something like that. But sometimes it's our brains that don't work right, and that causes great suffering too. So, really sad part there. But I guess the encouraging part for me during this part that we've read today is kind of sad with the house burning down and Ben dying, or the mission burning, but is Opal's attitude. She just is going to do the best she can do. She says she don't know how she even got through that other than the Lord. So she's going to rely on her faith, and then she's just going to put one foot in front of the other. and just do the best she can do. So that's really encouraging, really inspirational when you can hear people's stories of struggle like that and know that that's their attitude. It really, really inspires me. I hope it does you too. And I hope you enjoyed this part. And please leave a comment and tell me what part you like the best. And I hope you'll drop back by next Friday so we can see what happens to Opal next.